So what we really looked at and what my skill set was is looking at threats and, really making our defense, really strong before that would actually happen. So um, to break that down, I specialize in that cyber threat intelligence. So if you're not going out there and, educating yourself, that's on you because this technology, it is moving quicker than I have seen cyber, that it's moving quicker than I have seen robotics, but it's really lighting the fire underneath all of those.
Have you ever wondered what it takes to manage cybersecurity for major global events like the Olympics and World Cups? Our guest today, Robert Karloff, has done just that. With a background that spans from the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs to top Fortune 500 companies, Robert brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. So let's explore how he navigates the ever-evolving landscape of cyber threats. Welcome to the show.
Mike, you're too kind, buddy. Great intro.
I just appreciate you being here, and I like to give everybody a good intro to the audience. Let's just jump right in, though. What initially sparked your interest in the cybersecurity field?
Yeah, it was back in the year 2000. I was working on a cattle station. And to be honest, I was a jackaroo, and it was the time of the Y2K bug. And it just dawned on me. And I went to this employment registry and I basically said to them, hey, I want to work in IT. And they're like, oh, what's your IT experience? And I'm like, oh, no, I work on a cattle station. So they sent me away and they set me down. I did a computer exam. And this is no word of a lie. It was 28 words a minute at 50% accuracy. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really terrible. And the next minute I've got this phone call. Hey, Rob, you've got this job with an IT company. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. This is excellent. You see that printer over there? Go pick that up and move it over here. Oh, go get that old computer and push it over here. And that was how I really got started into it.
Yeah, that's so typical, though, of people when they first break into the field. They get put with all the grunt work. Move this workstation to this other floor, that kind of stuff. I can attest to that. I've actually had people do that kind of stuff.
Well, I call it apprenticeship, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was moving the hardware first, and then I kept on improving and wanting to get better. And then I started swapping out VGA cards and hard drives and motherboards and getting on that really hands and technical side and went through that level 1 help desk, that level 2 help desk. And I kept on exploring and just increased my knowledge, but I found myself just hitting these ceilings and I'm like, okay, I've done that. I'm really good at this now. What else can I do? And that's when I went and just kept on pushing and pushing where I am today.
So in my notes, I see you work for Citi and AIG. Is that correct?
Yep.
What are some of the most challenging cyber threats you had to deal with during your time there?
Let me just start that both these companies are absolutely amazing companies to work for. And to be honest, I wouldn't have left Citi if it wasn't for the opportunity to come over to the United States with AIG. What we really looked at and then what my skill set was is looking at threats and really making our defense really strong before that would actually happen. To break that down, I specialize in that cyber threat intelligence. But probably the biggest one, and I think a lot of people remember today, is that NotPetya and WannaCry. And I identified WannaCry probably 5 hours before it hit mainstream media. I was able to speak to a friend in Hawaii and I was able to speak to another friend in Eastern Europe. And we're like, hey, are you guys seeing what we're seeing? And they're like, yes. And that 5 hours was enough head start. So we were able to get everyone located in the war room and we're just watching all these feeds and all this smoke now and dust everywhere. And we're like, wow, what's going on? But I think the focus would be NotPetya and WannaCry.
Interesting. I remember those. So you run this Cyber News Live. What inspired you to start that?
Yeah, I was sitting down in the middle of COVID actually, and it's something I want to do. It's something I want to help the mum and dads. But my friend gave me this little bit of paper, and on that bit of paper, it says, if you don't come out with this quarantine with a new skill, your side hustle started, more knowledge, you haven't lacked the time, you've lacked the discipline. And that's when I really lit the fire. So I've really been pushing Cyber News Live now for the last, what month are we? We're in June. So I'm going to say 29, 30 months. And it's all about building up your brand and reputation, talking about threats and breaches. A lot of companies, they're either embarrassed or for legal reasons don't speak about them. And I think they've got a duty of care, not only to the clients, but the consumer base, right? So if they do suffer a breach, there should be an onus on these companies to talk about these breaches and hacks. And if you're caught up with them, you have to be proactive and put some credit monitoring and et cetera around that to protect yourself from credit card fraud or identity theft. Now, I touched on safe harbor, and I believe these companies that do get hit with ransomware or get breached or hacked, there needs to be a month of safe harbor where they can go and they know they can go to the FCC or the SEC with their information, say, hey, we've now been breached and this is what we're doing. At the moment, it seems like, hey, this company X gets breached. Next minute, the FCC finds them. They've got a class action lawsuit against them. And it's created this whole economy where these companies just don't want to speak about it. And look, I don't want to throw mud at them. My goal is to really get the message out there for the mum and dads who do get breached, that they don't know what to do about it.
Like living here in Las Vegas, we lived through the MGM hack a while back, and it's exactly as you described. Like they jumped right on it. They were trying to deal with it, but immediately they get fined for allowing it to happen. And what bothered me about it as a tech person, I like to do my research and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And I don't feel like they had enough time. I don't think that the SEC had enough time to know what was the actual cause. Now we know they were stupid and they allowed a social engineering hack happen. It's amazing to me how that occurs, but they allowed that to happen. Yeah, they were at fault, but we didn't know that at the time. Why jump ahead? So it's just odd to me that that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. And Mike, you mentioned it's MGM. At this
MGM.
time, Caesars happened as well.
Yes.
This is going to be a really good case study for young kids coming up through university on, should I pay the ransomware or should I not? Because company A did, company B didn't. And the end result, one company was operational very quickly, whilst the other one wasn't. The loss of revenue, even though they said it was a certain amount, I spoke to some guys around the industry and they're saying that some big rollers go through there and spend a lot of money on these casinos. Probably the number could have been 10 times higher than what they spoke of lost revenue.
And going forward into the future, because I know when I was a CTO, one of the things that I used to tell my web team was, hey, anytime we were a restaurant delivery service, I'd say to them, anytime a customer goes to our website and they experience an outage, it's going to be weeks before they ever come back, if at all. In this case, these people, they know that their information was breached and they're not going to go back there for a very long time, if ever, because they want to protect their money. And there's so many other places they can go and gamble. So many other places.
Yeah. And actually my partner and I, we were just at the MGM, was it the January, February beforehand? And so all of our data was caught up in it, which is, it's a little bit of a shame. And they haven't reached out to me yet with a credit lock or, hey, I'm sorry. It's a shame on that.
Yeah, the aftermath wasn't handled well at all. They really dropped the ball on the aftermath. And the locals here, they're still talking about it and wondering. In fact, one of the side effects afterwards was, if ever any casino had a little glitch in the registration system and people had to wait a little longer, suddenly it was, oh, I think they were hacked again. But
Yeah.
I'm still amazed. Like, to me, when I was a CTO, we had rules that we followed. Someone's calling my help desk and they're saying, hey, can you reset my password for me? With things we did to make sure that they were actually the person. Not very different from like when they tell you, if someone shows up at your door to collect a bill, ask them, can I call your office? And I think in this case, had they bothered to actually validate the person, it would have been over with. It wouldn't have been a problem. I honestly wonder if, you tell me what you think about this, but because this is your expertise, but I really like authenticator apps. I like them a lot for obvious reasons. Code's just constantly every 60 seconds rotating. Whether you're using it or not, it's rotating. I think it would be interesting if a company were to develop an authenticator app or an area on their site where you can set up two-factor authentication for the human being, so that they can literally say, because banks do it. Banks will say, I just sent you a code, read me the code. That's how they validate that it's actually the person and that they're not being spoofed. I actually think it would be better if they didn't send you a code and they just used a 2FA app and said, read me what's the code that you have there on your app? Because if somebody intercepted my emails, they'd get that stupid code. If they were spoofing my phone number, they might get the code. but they can't get it from the 2FA app that's on my phone that's authenticated to me and my device. So what do you think? Is that a potential way to handle it in the future?
It's the old evolution of banks and robbers. It really is. It's a game of whack-a-mole, and we'll do one step further than the bad guy can always. I don't know how they do it, but for some reason, they're not restrained from all the bureaucracy or the organization, and they can just go out there and get stuff. Look, something probably does have to be done. It would be interesting, but having an authenticator, I don't even like Windows passwords. I like the days when you could just log on without a username and password. Perhaps something like that we can have with a lively test that it's looking at you. It's already two-factor authenticated, but it's just that lively test that it is, you are who you are, basically. Log on, two-factor authentication, then send me a text message or use an authenticator app. But some that's very lively.
Yeah, a lot of software as a service places these days are doing that. You put in your email address and then they email you a code when you're logging in, and then you have to put that code in. So they don't actually use passwords, and it's their way around soft passwords. I know when I took over at the restaurant delivery service, the software was built by someone else. And I go into the database one day and I'm doing a query and I'm like, what in the hell is this? All the passwords were just in open text. That was maddening. We fixed that right away. But the second thing that I found intriguing though is how many people's password was just password or password 123. And you just go, no wonder people hack people if your password's password.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because today is actually World International Password Day.
So what do you think is the biggest cybersecurity threat that's facing individuals and businesses today?
Yeah, the number one that really does come to mind all the time, and we have discussions with industry, gets with government, and ransomware, that's not going anywhere soon. Phishing, and then the big one out there is also cloud. And now this is also, again, pushed by a force multiplier, which is today AI. Now, with AI, I'll talk about the 3 E's. You must embrace it. You must enhance it, but you must know when you need to extinguish it. So like all things in social media, you can use social media for good or bad. And a lot of it at the moment, I feel that it's going the other way. Same with AI. So embrace it, use it, enhance what you're doing through your 9 to 5, your daily work, but really understand how the technology works. There's so many free places where you can go and get education and learning on this too, from LinkedIn Learning to AWS. There is that much readily available. So if you're not going out there and educating yourself, that's on you, because this technology, it is moving quicker than I have seen cyber, that's moving quicker than I have seen robotics, but it's really lighting the fire underneath all of those. In the next 6 months, we're not even going to be where we are here today. It's a great place to be, but you really have to know, is it going to go too far as well? It's fascinating. But yeah, those biggest threats, back to that, that's 101, and it's all about education awareness. The ransomware, okay, is the United States government going to step in at some point and actually say, hey, you must stop all ransom payments, or hey, there is going to be a safe harbor, or is it going to be a free for all forever? And the other one is cloud. And cloud's also been a force multiplier in the sense that everything was cheaper. You can just spin up workstation servers and it's a lot simplified. But if you've had a look at the Azure or AWS, you nearly need a brain surgeon to understand how to configure it and put it all together. It's incredible. There's a lot of inherent risk with that. One company, I won't mention its name, but only recently raised $1 billion in the cloud security arena and it had a valuation of 12 billion in the last couple of weeks. Just phenomenal. But they're my 3 biggest risks. And as I said, we do speak to government and industry where we meet and collaborate on what we're seeing together.
So in your opinion, what's the most underrated skill that a cybersecurity professional should possess?
Yeah, it's those soft skills, but I'll go even further. It's being able to actively listen and not passively listen, because everyone sitting in a meeting can listen, but it's actively listening. I don't mean writing down a notebook, but it's actually having your ears picked up. you're listening to the tone, the volume, and you're inherently soaking in what is being spoken to about. I think that gets really overlooked. And from my experience, that would have to be the soft skill, actively listening, my biggest one.
Yeah, I think that's a technologist's issue in general, is in needing to actively listen. If you think about it, I spent many years as a software developer, and a lot of times people speak what they want, but that's not really what they want. And they give you clues. If you pay attention, they give you clues to what they really want. And then that's your cue to ask questions back, which number one shows that client that you were listening to them. But number two, it helps you go down the path that you need to go down. I actually just did a project not that long ago where Azure was involved, and the security setup was a nightmare. And I would not want to do that again. Although now, of course, I've learned what I need to do. It would be 10 times easier, but it's just a nightmare. And I'm often surprised by why companies don't pay attention to what's going on in the world and have things come preset up, at least with basic security. Like when you get an iPhone and you're setting it up, one of the steps is to give it a PIN so that when you lock the phone, you can unlock it with a PIN. That makes sense to me because you're securing the device as you're setting it up the first time. It just makes sense. But most of these companies, they just don't do that. So tell me, what's the most unusual cyber threat that you've encountered in your career? Yeah, we can move this around.
Cyber News Live in the sense that I oversimplify the message. I oversimplify it to help the mum and dads. I oversimplify it to be able to create a community. I oversimplify it to get my message across. And it's those soft skills. And it really helps when you're sitting around a board member when I can speak technical jargon at probably like the best of them, but to a board member, dot points, high level. If they have questions, they're going to ask you. They don't need to hear the zeros and ones, but can you please repeat your question?
Sure. No, that totally makes sense. I actually agree with you. I think one of the things I teach my clients is jargon-free communication is essential, because and giving only the information that's needed for them to understand the problem. And like you say, I always tell them, like I had one person say to me, well, but then I feel like I'm hiding things. You're not hiding anything. You need to give them everything, but high level. And then if they have a question, they'll ask you, hey, what about XYZ? But the question was, what is the most unusual cyber threat you've ever encountered in your career?
Unusual. Look, to be honest, I think the funniest, and I was just speaking about this today, was that Ashley Madison and the amount of government emails that were actually caught up within that. So I think that was just funny. Nothing's unusual. If you have an imagination today, and if you can imagine that this could happen, it could happen within cyber. There's some extremely intelligent people around that you think things could not happen and they do. So unusual. I don't know. Maybe what's one of your unusual things? Like I see thousands of hacks a day. To me now it's, oh, just another breach, another hack. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. It's nothing that I think I've become really immune to the ecosystem.
To me, the most intriguing one was I was a CTO for a short period of time for a company called 3B Tech. They were a manufacturer of electronics, and they negotiated a lot of different deals with parts manufacturers. So the lawyer was exchanging contracts and whatnot, and somehow somebody managed to figure out what her email address was. And then they registered a domain name. Instead of the number 3, the letter B, and the word tech, they put a 3, an L, and then an O, and then tech. And so on paper, like when you're looking on the screen, normal font size or on paper, it looks like that's a B. And so they sent information to the client saying, hey, tell me the wire information. And then they tried to intercept the wire. And to me, that was the most unusual, because to go to the lengths of registering a domain name that looks like the other domain name, but isn't quite the other domain name, was ingenious. And he handed me, Mike, figure out what the heck's going on here. I'm looking at it and going, looks normal to me. And then I took a closer look and I said, hold on a second. And I went to a copy machine and I just blew it up a bit. And I said, look, that's not a B. That did not come from who it claims to come from. And that's what happened was the person responded because they trusted the name and the email address, and they responded to it. So it was strange. So
We do
let's
see that.
talk about,
We do
but
see that all the time. Now, I'll tell you. Can I tell you who I like getting breached the most?
yes,
Take one guess. I'll give you one guess.
the government.
No, close. But or I'm going to tell you. I don't want to tell you guess, but it's lawyers. Man, I love it when lawyers get breached. Litigation, law firms, counsel. Oh man, it always brings a smile to my face. I don't know why, but sometimes I just start get glowing and I'm like, oh, another law company got done. This is really cool. This is juicy. I don't know why. I find that fascinating.
I can tell you why it happens. I worked tech for a law firm before. They're the cheapest people on earth. Law firms are run as a partnership, right? So there's all these guys, they work their way to the top. They're getting a cut of the profit.
Yep.
They don't want to spend money on another firewall or a cybersecurity person to come in and consult. I worked for this guy. He was the director of IT, and he was really what I call like a prickly kind of person. He said what he meant, and he was blunt. And one of the main partners didn't like him, and so they wanted to get rid of him. And they didn't have anything they could get rid of him, so they hired a consultant to come in and review everything. And the consultant said, man, with the money you give this guy, he's doing a phenomenal job. I don't understand how he's done half of the stuff that he's done with the money you've given him. The biggest problem here is you guys are cheapskates and need to give him more money. Literally, that's what the report
That was
said.
it.
You need to give him more money. And that's why lawyers get hacked all the time, because they don't protect their networks at all. And there's so many staff members that have computers where they're clicking links and they're downloading malware. It was one of the more stressful tech jobs I've ever worked. Some issue.
And not only that, you probably got to do your timesheets in those 6-minute intervals and everything's billable. And they don't look at you as a cost saver, but they look at you as an expense.
Yes.
That cooler bucket instead of, hey, if I actually invest in this proper IT cybersecurity hygiene, that I'm going to check my firm from all these bad guys out there.
Exactly. So how do you define?
That's probably why I laugh every time. And I love calling them out. And because it's all public information, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah. Big old scarlet letter on their website. We've been hacked.
I think I do have a lot of respect for companies that do put it on their top banner saying notice of a breach.
Yeah.
And I actually do have a lot of respect for those companies because they take it seriously. They understand that their customers are their business. Without their customers, they'd have no business.
And then you have companies, I hate to name names, but you'll know what I'm talking about, so I won't name names. But we have companies that have their software, of course, out there, password managers. And one of the big players got hacked. All of their data was stolen. And then they blamed their customers. Your passwords weren't strong enough. This, that, the other thing. Here's what I say to that. Require it. You want it to be stronger? Require a stronger password. That's on you, buddy. That's not on your customer. If you think that you're hackable with a 12-character password, make it an 18-character password, a 20-character password. It's like you said earlier when we were talking, you told me I'm in the seat here, so I get to decide. It's their software. They get to decide. But the gall to turn around and blame their customer for them getting hacked just blew my mind. Like,
Mike, I know the company you're talking about, and I was an avid user. And when you have 380 different passwords to manually go and change, that's not a weekend. That's like a full month, right? Because then what are you going to do? You're going to grab a new password manager. And I guess as security practitioners, we can't memorize all 380 passwords. So we do have to use a password manager. And you do put a lot of trust in these companies. And these companies do need to, I think, play at a higher standard. They need to be playing D1 sports, not D2.
Good. That's a great analogy because you're right. They have to put in the time and the effort and the heavy lifting because they're in a position of trust. And that's what made me mad was that then they turned around and blamed the customer. And I'm like, really? You're going to blame the customer for
very similar to a two-factor authentication company that's extremely large and big and kept on getting hosed over there for some time as well. And the whole ecosystem, it's not going to stop. And where does it stop? I think, personally,
my gosh,
I'm going off the grid.
It used to be that LinkedIn was a safe haven on social media. Not anymore. I don't know about you, but I get the people, they send me an email and it'll say, oh, I saw your profile and I want to be your friend. I roll. I know you're fake. I can tell.
But
Instagram, Facebook,
social,
they're loaded with scammers, but then there's also hackers behind some of those accounts and they're trying to steal personal information from people.
Mike, I'm very passionate about social media and all these fake accounts on it. And they don't want to remove them. Why would they? All that ad revenue, they don't have to remove it.
It's the same reason why newspapers give dollar subscriptions away to people, because they can charge more for ads.
Yeah.
And it's no different from the social media platforms. And here's the thing that gets me. The second I would see the request to follow, I'd be like, yeah, that's a scammer, but I feel like messing with you. So I'd mess with them. So this one scammer, I literally told him, I know you're a scammer. About 10 minutes later, Instagram told me that my DM privileges had been revoked for 30 days because I did not follow community guidelines. I was not nice in the chat. Now, this is an important point that people miss when I tell this story. They clearly can read your DMs. We know this.
Mhm.
So then how come they can't stop the scammers who are going out there and saying, hey, what would you do with an extra $1,000? Give me your Cash App tag. How come they can't read that? The answer is they can, but they don't want to.
It's not in their interest.
Yeah.
And I think if they cleaned up that whole ecosystem, and another thing I'm really passionate about, Mike, is having a social media license. In Australia, we have a 100-point license, right? So you got to have your proof of who you are. It's know your customer, like either electricity bill, birth certificate, social security number, whatever it is to get to 100. And I think people need to have a social media license. You shouldn't be anonymous online. If you are going to be able to say something, you should be able to stand behind it as well. That might be a good takeaway for the show. Let's all get a social media license. And if you don't have one, you get revoked.
I like that idea, because you go to the IRS website and you say to them, I don't have an account here, but I want to get an account. They use ID Me and it works, and it doesn't take long. I'm instantly in once I go through the ID Me process. Why not require these social media companies to do something very similar and identify every single user? It's a barrier for entry that they don't want to deal with. It reduces how many users they're going to have, which means they can't charge as much for ads, et cetera.
And the scary thing about this, if you do have a 401k, you most likely got shares in them as well.
Yeah.
You really do. But another one I'm really touching about is age verification. I honestly believe there needs to be an age limitation on social media. I don't know what the right age is, if it's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. But maybe if you can go fight in a foreign war, that's the age that,
It makes sense to me. My own children, I have 4 kids, and they did not have social media until they were like mid-teens, so like probably 15, 16 years old. And then it changed with each kid because some are more mature than others and they can handle it. I'll never forget my oldest 2, and they were using MySpace at the time. That's how long ago this was. And I kept telling them, you cannot be friends with anybody on MySpace that you don't know personally. What's the point? And I said, for one thing, it's my rule, but it's also to protect you. Protect me from what? And I said, do you know how easy it is to make a fake? So I sat down, I said, hold on. And I started signing up for MySpace as Angelica West. I'm not Angelica West, obviously. And then, yeah, but what about your pictures? And I went to Google and I said, attractive teenage female. And then I just looked until I found pictures that had more than one picture.
Mhm.
And I took 5 of the pictures. I created a profile and I said, so is your dad Angelica West? No. But now if I were to talk to people, they think I'm Angelica West. I have pictures. I have a name. I have an account. That's why you should only talk to people that you know. And it really sunk in at that point for them because they actually witnessed the account be created. But that's the thing that people don't understand.
But we've allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
We need to stand up and really make a scene on it. But to address the issue that you're just speaking about, I recommend parents sit down with their teenage children. And there's a movie, it's more of a documentary. It's called Tall, Hot, Blonde. And I think it came out around 2011. And it is a love triangle that ends in murder, basically, with this woman catfishing 2 men. And it's fascinating. It's real. And I recommend everyone watch that. Tall, hot, blonde.
Yeah, I think I've seen that movie. This has been an exciting conversation. I really appreciated your time here. Why don't you let the audience know how they can find you and connect with you?
Just Robert Karloff on LinkedIn or go to cybernewslive.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Robert, for your time today. I know you're a busy man and I appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for being here for another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Till then, see you next week.